Cloud Atlas is the one film that epitomizes more than any other recent release the description, flawed but still great. Cloud Atlas is an incredibly ambitious ensemble piece that consists of 6 separate yet intertwined narratives taking place over 6 time periods, half of which are directed by the Wachowskis and the other half by Run Lola Run director Tom Tykwer. These narratives are a maritime drama about the friendship between a businessman and a stowaway slave in 1849, a somber and ultimately tragic drama about a gay composer in 1936 Cambridge, a tense 70s-era thriller about a journalist investigating a nuclear plant conspiracy, a present-day comedy about an old publisher trapped in a retirement home, a science fiction action story set in Neo-Seoul, and, chronologically last, a post-apocalyptic sci-fi drama about a tribesman and a prescient joining forces. These narratives are linked not by plot but by more subtle artistry. They share interesting themes of life, reincarnation, slavery, freedom, standing up to authority, and the rippling effect of our lives on those of others, even far into the future. Most notably, nearly every major cast member plays a different role across the 6 narratives, and this is achieved through impressive makeup and special effects that allow the actors to change their age, race, and even gender. Some of the makeup is really good, some of it astonishingly good, and you quickly get used to the less realistic conversions, meaning that the makeup transformations are never distracting. As with Slaughterhouse-5, you would think that Cloud Atlas's mixture of genres, tones, and unconnected narratives, and the way it alternates between them, would make the film a jumbled, inconsistent mess. But since Cloud Atlas is a very intimate, human-focused film, the structure encompasses an exciting and often wondrous span of human experience, in terms of history and emotion. The film cleverly shifts from one narrative to the next through stylish transitions such as similar shots, set pieces, and action sequences, which reinforces the theme of our actions echoing into the future. You also seldom, if ever, lose track of the plot of each narrative due to the film's skillful, well-paced editing and the use of those parallels. Each narrative is exciting, sometimes funny, and thoroughly compelling on its own, with my favorites being the Neo-Seoul, 70s, and post-apocalyptic ones, but they all add up to a satisfying totality of, again, common ideas engaged with in different ways. The performances are outstanding from the entire cast, especially from Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Jim Sturgess, and Hugo Weaving, who is awesome in everything. Looking back at the Oscars this year, I'm honestly surprised that there were no nominations for Cloud Atlas in any category, let alone the acting and makeup categories. The entire cast succeeded, often under heavy makeup, in remaining convincing in dramatically different personas and settings, and this demonstrates incredible versatility. It may have been too complicated to fit Cloud Atlas's actors into the Oscars, as the film doesn't have a single main character, and, for instance, Jim Sturgess, Tom Hanks, and Halle Berry play main characters in 2 narratives, but only cameo in the other 4, thus making them both lead and supporting actors, but they should have been acknowledged in some way. For that matter, there were only 3 nominees in the makeup and hairstyling category, instead of the average 5 in most of the other categories. Why wasn't Cloud Atlas, with its not perfect but still excellent makeup, placed in that category? It certainly deserved to win over Les Mis. Cloud Atlas is also a staggeringly beautiful movie, with gorgeous visuals and a wonderful score. Again, where was Cloud Atlas in the cinematography and visual effects categories? The action in the Neo-Seoul and post-apocalyptic narratives is also pretty cool. I loved Cloud Atlas. It's currently my favorite movie of 2013, and I'm counting it as such because it only came out in Australia on February 28, and among 2012 movies, I would rank it at number 4, above Looper and below Argo. Do I have problems with Cloud Atlas? Of course I do. The interview framing device for Sonmi 451's story in the Neo-Seoul narrative gets rather confused, as we are unsure whether she has been rescued or the interview and flashback are still going. When Sonmi broadcasts her manifesto, her statements about how our lives are not our own feels blatant and unsubtle, especially since the film was doing fine communicating this message through subtext and showing instead of telling before and after this. The similarities in the Neo-Seoul narrative to Blade Runner are also a little trite. I also realized that the narratives directed by the Wachowskis are more closely connected in theme and meaning than those by Tom Tykwer, which makes Tykwer's segments stand out as somewhat disconnected. The 1849, Neo-Sol, and Post-Apocalypse narratives, all directed by the Wachowskis, have a clear shared focus on people challenging the barriers of acceptance. In the Neo-Sol narrative, Somni 451, a bioengineered servant not unlike a replicant, is enlisted to head a revolution against the oppressive Unanimity government and its enslavement of fabricants. It is implied that Somni will become a martyr for justice and liberty, and we see a direct result of this in the Post-Apocalypse narrative, as the primitive tribe worships Somni as a deity. The 1849 and Post-Apocalypse narratives mirror each other quite closely, despite the vastly different characters and genres, as both segments depict two people ordinarily separated by class or racial prejudice, saving each other's lives and bonding as allies, and later as friends. This shared focus complements the theme of reincarnation present across the entire film by showing that racial and gender differences mean little and just don't matter. As you can see, the 1849, Neo-Sol, and Post-Apocalypse narratives are quite closely linked through strong use of theme and even plot points, which again makes the other narratives stick out for their relative lack of connection. There are, of course, some important and well-defined references to the 6 time periods within each individual narrative. Frobisher from 1936 is reading Ewing's journal from 1849. Louisa Ray from the 70s is entranced by Frobisher's composition The Cloud Atlas Sextet. And Cavendish from 2012 is presented with a manuscript of Louisa's life and the events of the 70s narrative. And of course, the theme of reincarnation, with the same cast playing multiple roles throughout the 6 narratives, is highly apparent. The 1936 narrative may show someone trying and failing to go against a world of discrimination, as Frobisher will sadly face poverty and disgrace after being ousted as a homosexual, which relates to Moore's threatening monologue in 1849. The 70s and 2012 narratives have the theme of defying authority, and, now that I think about it, the 2012 and Neo-Sol narratives both feature an unjustly trapped person who escapes to freedom, and both have a car chase of sorts. The 70s narrative also has a car chase. A dramatization within the film of Cavendish's ordeal in the nursing home also inspires Somni 451 to seek her liberation, and it's possible that the nuclear power plant disaster that Louisa strives to avert in the 70s narrative may foreshadow the unknown cataclysm preceding the post-apocalypse narrative. All of the narratives are linked to some extent through the theme of reincarnation, those clever references, and the stylistic touches and parallels mentioned before, but I can't help but feel that the Tom Tykwer directed segments lack the unified theme of the Wachowski directed segments, which makes the latter more cohesive. The way I see it, and I'm going off script here a little, the 3 narratives directed by the Wachowskis are linked together by a strong central theme of people pushing past the barriers of acceptance, but the narratives directed by Tom Tykwer are linked together and linked to the rest of the film through smaller themes and those references I mentioned. The contrast between the Wachowski-directed segments, which are connected by a strong, underpinning and consistent theme, and the Tom Tykwer segments, which are connected by references and smaller themes that are not continuous across all 3 narratives, just makes the film seem a bit unbalanced. But does this diminish my great enjoyment of the film and all 6 of its narratives? Not a bit. It's just something I would have wanted to see out of the film, though I admit that connecting the Tykwer-directed segments more directly to the Wachowski segments might have been a little contrived. Anyway, I really liked Cloud Atlas, which earns 4.5 stars out of 5. Thanks for watching. Cheers.